Hey everybody, it's Greg from GRB Academy. Wanted to talk recruiting today to help with some education on what is happening. There's a lot of moving pieces. I know people in the 21, 22 class, 23 class, 24 class are starting to wonder what's going on, and I just think it's good for people to be educated on what is happening and maybe catch advice that way or do some thinking about their current situation. Um, so I'm just going to go through the years, what's coming down the pipeline, as best as what I think, and maybe what some other people think. So in the 2020 season coming up here, you have a couple interesting dynamics that will shape some of the years to come. One, there is an unlimited roster. So they have all these players. You're going to see really large rosters. And it'll be interesting to see the shakeout of what kids eventually leave if they don't play, decide to hang up their cleats, and what happens to some of the players that have come in this year. You're going to see some shortened seasons, meaning there's going to be, some conferences decide to play conference only, some decide to limit the non-conference. And people ask why, like why would they stay just in conference or why are they limiting? Well, I think the biggest thing is the COVID testing and has not gotten any leadership from the NCAA. What it has done is it's pushed the bill down to each conference to determine their testing standards and what they need. So you're going to see people trying to play interconference games and the testing maybe doesn't match what their conference does, and so it's going to be a really expensive, kind of challenging thing for a lot of schools to pull off in terms of matching the COVID testing and in terms of time before they need to play that team and getting the results back and some of that. So that is why some of the shortening is happening. So hopefully the 2020 season happens. I think people should watch closely to the basketball player that collapsed at Florida the other night. If that is a COVID-related issue with his heart, and that's why he collapsed and went to the ICU, there is a real chance that college basketball is done. And if that is done, I think everyone should be worried about what happens to college baseball and sports in general for a while until COVID is fully cleared out. Next month, the long-awaited one-time transfer rule will be attempted to be passed again. This failed earlier in the year. I thought it should have happened. It will pass this time. And what that means is anyone at any school can transfer one time without penalty. And I think we're going to see three things come from this. One, there's going to be some form of weed out where players decide they're not at a good fit, and they'll transfer and end up at D2s, D3s, and JUCOs. And as a general thought process, I think D2s, D3s, and JUCOs will be the strongest they have ever been in the history of college baseball in the next 2 years because of this and because of some of the roster challenges happening. You're also going to see draft guys, and people will love to hear this, but like if you're at a smaller Division One, you're going to see the big boys of Division One baseball try and, through word of mouth say, hey, you could end up here. You're going to see kids enter the portal who are draft guys probably and transfer to different schools, even though they maybe have their path set up. They are going to get lured from smaller Division Ones and move around. And then the last thing I think you're going to see is Division Ones are probably going to be plucking players from D2s and D3s who are also probably draft guys or have had a ton of success at the D2 level. It's an arm that the velocity is really good and has had success. That person can transfer automatically to a D1, and you're going to see summer leagues will play a big role in this probably. A lot of people are going to be frustrated by it. It is illegal, but it is going to happen. So you're going to see movement within the game of baseball like that. For 2020 players who are there, the one thing I will say that will transfer to the 21 class is you probably see, because of these large rosters, older guys playing, and shortened seasons, there's going to be a lot of arms and maybe some position players that do not play or schools, it takes a lot for an arm to go be an impact arm right away. Schools are going to redshirt these players. They obviously will have the ability to transfer, but I think most, when they stay, will you're going to see the 21 class get impacted because you're going to have all these players who are 2020 freshmen who maybe weren't going to be huge impact guys, or because of the shortened season, the school figures they can develop them for a full year without wasting a year of eligibility. And then you'll see some strength in the 21 class and smaller numbers recruited in the 21 class based on the fact that all these 20s are probably grabbing a redshirt year. So that is what it looks like, with some of the things happening in 20. And how does that transfer to the 2021 year? So we'll talk about like the 2021 season, what is happening there, and then 2021 recruits. 2021 season is still not going to be normal. The NCAA has given the ability. It's not going to be unlimited roster next year. In 21, it will be a 40-person roster size, and there'll be 32 counters. And counters are scholarship players. So traditionally, you can only have 27 people on scholarship. That's your max. Those are called counters. That will be 32 in 2021. It's normally 27. The 11.7 rule probably stands, but the 25% rule will not be in place. So meaning you are not you don't have to be guaranteed 25% athletic-based scholarship. They can spread that 11.7 however they want over 32 guys instead of 27, so you probably are going to see some people with some smaller scholarship numbers. So if you are a 21 player, unless you are a late bloomer or a draft guy, almost every Division I school I think is done. You may see some late walk-ons. It would be very odd. I just think everyone is in a case of they don't know, with these new roster limits and with a lot of them have committed to a bunch of 21s. They don't know what's going to happen. And then the thought process of redshirting a lot of 20s, they're just going to be done protecting those who they previously committed. And then looking at, the planned current roster cuts. So if you're a 21, I think you need to start thinking a lot about D2s, D3s, JUCOs. And honestly, just for everyone, and I'll touch on this again at the end, like going to one of those situations is not a bad situation. Like I said, the baseball is going to be better than ever. I think you need to be more realistic than ever as a player instead of, firing some blind darts at schools you want to go to and rolling the dice just because of the numbers. And the age-old saying, if you look at the draft, you can see all the D2s and D3s and JUCO kids getting drafted. Like, in some cases, you're better off getting drafted out of there than you are several D1s. So that is a situation I think people need to really think about. For people who are, late 21s hoping to get seen still, the challenge is the NCAA has changed the recruiting timeline to April 15th. If I'm a betting man, it's probably June 1st. I don't know why the NCAA would put the recruiting cycle in the middle of their season where someone could go out and recruit, get infected, and come back to their team and spread it that way. They've been very careful at the Division I level. I don't know why they would compromise the season and not just say June 1st when most travel baseball starts, which limits anyone going to any high school baseball games to watch. So I think that's probably what you see. So that's kind of the outlook for 21s. Not a great outlook, especially knowing that there's going to be a lot of redshirting in 20. And when you arrive, there'll just be bigger rosters. In 2022, I think every school is different. They haven't announced what relief they'll give to teams in terms of roster sizes, but hopefully it's a step-down system where they just don't go from 32 to 27 overnight, because then you'd have to see a bunch of kids get removed off of aid. and hopefully they step down the roster sizes gradually to protect the players somewhat. I would say most schools, there's 3 levels of where people are at in 22. Some are fully done. What does that mean? Still are late bloomers to look for. Some are have the majority of the recruiting done. They're still fluid because of roster moves or players leaving or draft. And then there's some that haven't really moved a ton. They may have 1 kid, they may have 2, but they've been very careful because they don't know what they're looking for. So I think 22, if you're a 22, instead of freaking out about recruiting right now or wondering why you're not getting recruited, there's very few people getting a ton of recruitment right now in general. You should be focusing on 1, how can I physically be ready? And 2, what have I done this last year to be ready to get recruited this upcoming summer? Because coaches will be back out. The 22 class did not get seen as 16-year-olds. And you really need to hit the pavement early and be fully ready to perform. It's going to be really important. I don't think college coaches will have a ton of time for those of you who haven't done enough and made yourself a super recruitable kid that looks like you can play right away. And that's going to change, your college path. So if I had to give advice to a 22, if there are offers in front of you, you should take them serious. There's going to be a ton of upfront pressure in the summer. When coaches can be back out, it's going to, I would say it's going to be really aggressive because you have a lot of schools that haven't done a ton. And then, right now, you shouldn't be freaking out about recruiting. You should just be I need to freak out about becoming a way better baseball player and a ton more physical, because that will stick out early. The 23s, I guess no one knows what the relief in 23 is. I think it will be close to normal when 23s get on campus. I think it needs to be, because I think the challenge in 23 and 24 is if schools are still with super extended rosters and the scholarship pieces went down, it's going to be really expensive for a lot of schools, and you may see programs start to question if they should keep baseball in 23 or in 24 if they still are going to have 40 guys on a roster and the scholarship numbers are back down to 27. That's a lot of extra weight being carried in gear, food, sport performance, and stuff like that. So I think it will be important that things get back to normal. I think you'll finally start to see 5th and 6th year guys start to weed out if they don't have legitimate pro situations in front of them. I mean, for those who are 23s right now wondering about recruiting, the Power 5 is not going to slow down. They're still going to be aggressive in their recruiting. I think most schools are slowing down with 23s because they did not see them as 15-year-olds, and they're going to see a normal 16U summer most likely. So if you're a 23 and feel like the recruiting's not hot, if you're not a top 200 player, that's probably true. Because the Power 5 is trying to pick through and pick up as many of those as possible. And smaller schools are going to wait to see them because they obviously can't be as wrong on picking up players. And then 24s, I think the world should be back to normal in terms of playing in 24. College baseball will have to have figured it out in 24 in terms of roster sizes. Like I said, expenses will be a challenge then. And it's going to be super slow. I think if you went and looked at the top 250 on Perfect Game right now, you're going to see that 70, 80, 90, 100 of those kids are already committed to Power 5s. That will continue. But I think in general, it's going to have to slow down somewhat. So if you're at 24 and hoping that you're getting recruited right now, you're not listed in the top 250 or have a really good program pushing you, it's probably going to be slower. So I would say the 22s, where I said focus on your strength training and becoming a better baseball player because it's going to matter. I think 23s and 24s for the most part should have their head down and work and not be trying to get caught in the limelight here of who's recruiting me, who's not. There's a long ways to go with a lot of questions about what the roster looks like and what college baseball looks like when you get there. for everyone wondering then, like, what happens if all this D1 stuff is goofy? I will just say, like in 22, like picking a good JUCO, 21, picking a good JUCO. I've got 3 kids, like they're boys, like I will not be shy with the JUCO route with them. I've always said that, and here's why. Right now, with the unknown prospect of freshmen and what they can contribute, in an older game, you're going to see Division I coaches go out and go really hard at the JUCO level. They will build the rosters off of this more than they will care about freshmen in the next few years. And honestly, the amount of money that's being paid to the junior college players is almost double of what is being given to high school players right now. I know it's not sexy for a lot of people to be like, oh, I went to a JUCO. They want the Twitter tweet about where they're going and the big name behind them. And sure, if you're a top player that thinks you can play right away, that's great. But I would say for the average player or the average good players, you need to think about some different routes realistically, knowing that like you're going to see D1 teams poach D2 players that have had success. You're going to see junior college kids, like I said, get scholarship levels that are higher than anyone out of high school can imagine. So that is what I'm mostly seeing. I just thought it would be a good thing to get out because I've gotten so many questions, not just from our program, but from other travel coaches who call and ask what we're seeing or what are you guys doing. I mean, honestly, I think that's what's going on right now. And so, like I always say, being a good program is super important because the coaches need to be connected with college coaches. And it will matter because the decision making needs to be super sound for those of you in 22 and 23, just because there's going to be a lot of pressure on the whole system in general. So that's all I got for you today. I hope you have a good day. If you have any questions, you can email me at greg@grbacademy.com. I would love to answer any questions people have on recruiting. Thanks.